Hello, welcome to Kenty Prime Time. Paul Kent here to talk all things rugby league. Joined once again by the one and only Johnny Elias. Johnny, welcome.
Thank you.
And
Glad
our
to be
special
here.
guest today, given it's the Easter weekend, we thought we'd get an Easter bunny in. So, Campbell Graham, mate, thank you very much for coming in. It's much appreciated, and particularly when you've got a big game
Yeah.
coming up.
Cheers, thanks for having us. Yeah, big game against the Dogs this week, so looking forward to it.
Let's just talk a little bit about that first. The NRL have done a great job in recent years of having this whole Easter weekend. And traditionally now it's become that way. Rabbitohs against the Bulldogs on Good Friday, Easter Monday, Parramatta against West Tigers. And the fair to say, your game, it's taken on a bit of a life of its own, hasn't it? Like there's a little bit of extra edge I see when you watch the game that's not really there in week-to-week club games.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a bigger game for us as players. You know, we're expecting a big crowd out there, so obviously with the Easter show and that, it's quite the spectacle. I think this year they're predicting a bigger crowd, or the biggest crowd that they've
70,000 they're talking about. Yeah, massive.
That's massive.
So it's, as a player, you know, they're the games you want to get up for, the big atmosphere and big occasion, and obviously the Dogs are probably the benchmark at the moment, so it'll be a good test for us to see where we're at.
The week you lead into it, I know it's all every week's supposed to be the same, but do you feel something a little different this week? Is it like these certain games, these marquee games that the NRL put on during the year, this being one of them? Is it just something a little bit extra there this week?
Well, I think you try to prepare the same, but there's no doubt an added feeling of excitement. You know, playing in front of an atmosphere is sort of, I suppose it hits you more when you're at the game and you run out and you hear the noise of it all.
It's an Origin crowd, really, isn't it? Like it's an Origin-sized crowd, 70,000.
Yeah, I mean, Bulldog supporters, they're mad.
And they are as every bit as passionate.
Very passionate.
I dare say the Rabbitoh supporters aren't too sane themselves, John.
No, I agree with that, yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they can get a bit loopy on the side.
But being of Lebanese origin, Paul, they're predominantly Lebanese supporters, the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Very proud too.
Yeah.
But it brings like a bit of oomph to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. You know, it touched on 70,000. Biggest crowd I've ever played in front of. You know, I played in a grand final, but that was at Suncorp, which obviously doesn't hold that much. So, I'm very excited.
How was that experience playing that grand final? Just before we keep going on, just as a quick sideline, unusual playing a grand final Suncorp that year. That COVID year, obviously, while the game was there.
Yeah, it was a bit bizarre, to be honest. You know, I suppose growing up as a supporter and being from Sydney, the grand final week was always built up in Sydney, and going out to a core and obviously the 80,000 atmosphere. But you know, in saying that, Suncorp's probably the best footy stadium we got in Australia, and you know, a packed out Suncorp is pretty good too.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the Bulldogs this season. I was talking to a mate of mine the other day. I think I might have even said this to you, Johnny, just about how they play, and they're a team. A lot of teams are getting into this whole, they pick an athlete and try to teach them a few footy skills, if that makes sense. But the Bulldogs, they've just seemed to have built this game plan around just solid footballers, guys who've got high footy intellect, who understand game situation very well, who have got all the basic fundamentals down. They can all catch pass. They have guys that are playing back row that can ball play. Yeah, the guys can mix and match different positions. I imagine it's like the improvement in them, but is significant. And then a side like yourselves coming up against them, there's a lot to watch out for.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, the thing that stands out the most is their defence and how hard they work in defence. And premierships are won on defence. You know, that's not a cliche. That's a cliche for a reason. You know, and they work hard in defence, and you know, they've held a few teams to 0 this year, and you know, it's a great challenge for us to see where we're at. And yeah, obviously you do what you can to break teams down, but you know, so far not many teams have been able to do that to the Dogs.
What do you make of them, John?
Bulldogs?
Yeah.
I've got a different opinion, Paul. They beat a Newcastle side that had 15 players for 79 minutes, mind you. And they beat a team the week before, the Sharks. Yes, it was at the Sharks Stadium. They also had 15 players. That second half, they had 2 players. Yeah, because of injuries, of course. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced yet, but I just want to wait and see. Yeah, they're a great defensive side, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I'd argue they're not. I wouldn't see them as a true number one team on the ladder, which is where they're currently at. but they're also a side who you can see the improvement in them. I think there's a clear difference in the way they play as opposed to what the sort of the normal structure has been in, say, the past 5-10 years. The game's always in an evolutionary stage.
I agree with that, yeah.
But you look at the way Penrith they evolved. They had so many men in motion and so much happening on the field. And Canterbury going that way, but they seem to just have a few more ball players. Like the lockers coming to the game now is almost an extra spine player. It began at Penrith with Yo, but it's also happened now at Canterbury.
I was impressed when they lost 2 star players. I mean, Burton and Kickow. They still won their 2 games, but they did win against a 15-man team. So still not convinced, Paul.
How do you game plan for them?
Yeah, great question.
I think, you kind of want to, as a...
You can give us a truth. Give us a clue.
Come on, Wayne, mate. I'm seeing Wayne on Sunday. Don't worry. He won't mind. Don't worry.
Wayne won't mind. Trust us.
No.
We're old friends.
Wayne will never talk to me again. Go on.
No, well, I think, with a strong defensive unit like that, you want to try and move them around a little bit, and I suppose... you don't really want to. You can see how good their wrestle is. So going one out at them and not having that push support, it's not going to work. They're really strong in their wrestle. They work hard at their wrestle, and they win their tackles. So we want to try and move them around a little bit, and throw shapes at them and play our footy. And I think that's what our strength is as a team. Is we got some players that can do things that not many other players in the NRL can do. So. That's how we're going to approach it.
What about defending against them? I imagine that must be a nightmare when you sit down and you start to go through all the vision and all the rest of that. Because again, they are finding threats on the field that are not traditional. Is probably the best way to say it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they got threats across the field. Both their back rowers are playing great footy. You got Kickout and Preston, who's having a really strong year, and both their centres are strike centres, and across the park, like you said, through the middle, they got ball players. So, there's a lot to think about defensively. But, I think with these teams, the thing that you can get a little bit lost in trying to worry about how to defend them as opposed to, defending how you want to defend as a team, as a unit. And having, each team has their system. And I think the more you can buy into that system and really actually work in that system as a group, then hopefully that nullifies, what they offer in attack.
Knowing Wayne, Paul, I think he'd be more worried about his own backyard first. I think he'd be worried to get news ready and not focusing too much on the opposition.
That's the way Wayne operates.
That's the way he operates, Paul. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, don't worry about them. Let's just do what we do.
Let them worry about us. Yeah, exactly right.
Just keep it humming along the way we do it. But the ladder's had a real sort of it's almost upside down. If you showed someone the ladder this year. You've got Canterbury on top. You've got Penrith running 16th out of 17.
That's a shock.
You've got Roosters running 15th out of 17. It's a bit of a shock year in that respect, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the opening rounds, you can't really pick, the winners, really. Like, you go in thinking you've got a pretty good idea of how the results will go, and, nearly every week they're all wrong. So, I think it's great as a spectator of the game, and you go into the games and maybe it is getting to a point where teams are becoming evenly matched, and upsets are becoming more they occur more often. And but in saying that, I feel like it is still early days in the big scheme of things. It's 7 rounds in, it's a long season, so you'd imagine that as the season progresses, they'll probably become a more clear cut. Contenders for the premiership and whatnot.
But Penrith are 1-5. Okay, nobody foresaw that. That's just shocked everybody. I think that 1-5. Are they done though? You already statistically they can't win the grand final. No team has ever started the comp 1-5, 1 win 5 losses, and gone on to win the competition. My argument against that is no team has ever been 1-5. Having won the 4 previous premierships. Yeah,
I mean, it's a interesting position they find themselves in, and one that they're definitely not used to. So it is interesting to see how they're going to bounce back from where they're at, and I definitely think that they're going to improve as a team, and results will start going their way. I think obviously they've lost some close games. They've also been leaking a lot more points than the previous 4 or 5 years, which is
he touched on a good one.
Yeah, which is
defense.
Yeah. So
Fisher Harris is not there tightening it up like he was. Like, it's probably underestimated how important he was, certainly defensively.
And the 6, Jerome, and
Yeah.
the winger scoring tries.
Do you still think they make the 8 though? Like, if you know, of course they can, okay. But if you actually want to go through it and not fall in the trap of saying, okay, he's in my top 8, and naming 14 teams that make your top 8, like, certainly they're amongst that group. But to actually genuinely make it, they've got a lot of teams they've got to pull back on. They've got to win, like, 14 of the last 17 or something like that to get there.
yeah, well, that's a big ask.
12,
so,
13 of the last 17, I think it is, but that's a massive ask, isn't it, really?
Yeah, especially you'd think even though maybe their performances haven't been going so well, that Origin period will probably still sting them a little bit. So
That'll sting them.
So they're going to lose Cleary at Origin. They'll lose Yeo at Origin. If To'o's back, they'll probably lose him at Origin.
Martin.
And Liam Martin at Origin. So and they haven't. What I think this year's already shown is they haven't got that depth there that they've had in previous years, where guys could come in and they'll still clocking away with 1 or 2 wins during Origin period that would help them through.
We talk about teams making the 8, correct? They got to aim for the 4, Paul. I mean, if you come, no team's won the competition out of the 4.
Yeah.
No one's won it.
Yeah.
You can't come from 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th to win the premiership. If they're looking to win the premiership, Penrith, they got to finish in the top 4. It's not going to happen.
I can't see.
I can't see making top 4.
No.
It's not going to happen.
So we lay them.
I think we might.
We might.
As you know, Paul, we don't gamble anymore.
Well, unless it's responsibly, John.
Unless it's
We'll see.
exactly right.
What about the Roosters though? They're a funny side too. Like I wouldn't say they planned to have an off year, but I think they knew this was coming this year. I think they've sort of bankrolled some salary cap money for next season. But again, I don't think anyone really anticipated they'd be as far behind as they are.
Yeah, it's an odd one because they've pulled off some impressive wins. In their wins this year, they beat Broncos
and
Penrith. Yeah, and when we
thought Penrith were going better.
Yeah, and they were heavy underdogs for those games, and they performed really well. But they've also lost a fair bit so far. So
they couldn't beat your side, Graham, when your side lost 3 players before half time.
Yeah, that was all heart, mate. That was all
heart
from
us. There you go.
So that was good. That was a good win from us. Yeah,
it was a great win.
But yeah, I mean, as you said, they've had a fair change in their roster this season. So obviously, there's going to be some adjustment periods with that, and as they do, they tend to attract some big signings, which they got Robson coming down, and I'm sure that's not the last of it.
Let's talk a bit about you, Graham.
Yeah.
Or Campbell, sorry. That sternum injury, it's a massive one because I've had a sternum injury, was out for 13 weeks, very painful. What were the difficulties? I mean, if coming back, talk to me about it.
Yeah, it was such a long process, and it was a little bit of an unknown, this surgery that I had, and there wasn't really a blueprint in terms of this is when you can expect to do contact again, this is when you can expect to play again. So that was probably one of the difficult things. It was a bit like how long's a piece of string. I didn't have a date in my head or a goal in mind when I could be back playing. I knew that, it wouldn't be a career ender or anything like that, but I just wasn't sure if I'd be able to play footy in 2024 or not. And, initially it was, you'll play halfway through the year 2024 season, and then as that crept up, it was looking more like round 20, and then I think as well how we were going that year, we weren't going to make the 8, so the decision was made to brush the season completely. But yes, coming back,
that tough that bit.
Yeah, it was hard because even as a player when finals is out of reach, you still want to go out there and play footy, and I love playing footy, and sitting back and watching games is tough, and I did plenty of that last year. So that was pretty hard.
They bugger you up a bit too, didn't they? They didn't pass on the right information. My understanding, when they passed on from one medical staff who left the club to the new guy that came in, who wasn't made aware of the problem you had, which has meant you aggravated it in the off season, which meant that's why you're probably going to be back much earlier last year.
Yeah,
and
so
it cost you the season, and fair to say, mate, it probably cost you an Origin jersey too.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's all speculation in terms of selection in rep teams, but with the injury, I don't really want to point the finger at anyone because I feel like it was such an unknown. I went and saw specialists and they gave the advice. Specialists gave me the advice and the medical team at South the advice that, well, this is how they think they'll manage it. They thought, leaving it and giving it rest, it would heal on its own. And then, when it came time to doing contact again in the preseason, it got to February and the season was around the corner, and that's when the decision was made to get surgery. So obviously in hindsight, I would have got it at the end of 2023, but, I was a part of the decision-making process as well. And, I wasn't kept in the dark about any of it. So it was just unfortunate, and that's just how it went.
One of the things we like to do is like obviously talk about what's behind the scenes and things like that. And a lot of people know all about you blokes. They watch your weekend and all the rest of it, but they don't know what happens behind the scenes. And when you're in the rehab group and you've got to go away and you've got to have surgery and then you've got to come back, can you just talk us through like how that is and what you've got, the process you've got to do? And I also know there's an alienation too where you're sort of with the team but you're not with the team anymore.
Yeah, it sucks, to be honest. It's pretty shit. As you touched on, you just by circumstance, you're never really around the team that often. You go in, your schedule's different, and then when you're there, when the boys are there, they're on the field, but you're in the gym, or you're running on the side of the field when they're on the field, and obviously the away trips that, that's where some of your best memories are made, and the enjoyment comes on. You're not a part of any of that, and for example, last year I missed out on the Vegas trip, and that was a once. That was
potentially once in a lifetime.
Lifetime experience. So and there's some dark days. You go in, especially with the long term injuries, where as I touched on, I wasn't sure what the end, where the light at the end of the tunnel was, and you'd go in and you're doing this bike session by yourself, or you're running on the field getting flogged by yourself, and especially for me, once I knew my season was over, I was going in and getting flogged, almost thinking, well, what's the point of doing this when, I've got a pre-season ahead of me and all that kind of thing. So there's definitely days where motivation is lacking. You do feel a little bit excluded from the group, and, you don't get to experience those and share those great moments.
It's like a disconnection, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been there.
Yeah.
There's no worse feeling, Paul.
Yeah.
You feel like you're just not part of the team.
Yeah, it is.
You are, but you're not. Like
Yeah.
It plays up here.
Yeah.
It does.
How did you
credit
deal
to
with
you
that?
coming back, mate. It's a credit.
Yeah, cheers.
How'd you deal with it? Like obviously when you were there training, you were training, but when you're headed home, when you're sort of sitting there, when you watch them go away for an away game, knowing you weren't there, imagine.
Yeah, it was hard. I definitely muted the group chat a few times because, on away trips and that where, you see the boys are going out after a win or something like that, and it's pretty hard sitting back and knowing that you're missing out on all that kind of thing. So, it was tough. But in saying that, I still was in a privileged position to be playing footy, and the club looked after me enormously. They gave me time to go away overseas and stuff once my season was over. So, that was unreal, which was, I'm very grateful for. And, it is just, and at the end of the day, I wasn't the first, and I won't be the last bloke who, has to do a long stint on the sidelines, and it's just a part of footy.
When you went away, I'm led to believe it's a bit of an unusual trip by, a bloke in his mid-20s situation. You went hiking, is that right?
Backpacking?
No backpacking. No. You were misled there. I went to.
Got to go back to my source.
I went to Germany for the Euros, and then I went to London, and then I finished it off with a weekend in Mykonos, which was unreal.
You got permission from the club to do that?
I did, yeah. So I got 2 weeks off where, once the season for me was over, they made the decision I wasn't going to play for the rest of the year. I'd actually picked up a little soft tissue injury as well, so I couldn't run anyway. So they were like, well, instead of coming around here doing nothing, you can have a couple of weeks off. And I said, well, do you mind if I jet over to Europe? Then they gave me the green light, so that was very good of them.
I want to go to Wayne Bennett, the Hall of Famer. Okay, a lot of players in the competition would have loved to be coached by him, okay?
Yeah.
You've not only had it once, you get it the second time now. Anything changed about him? Persona, coaching methods? Or is he still the same?
He's still the same. You know, a
What
lot.
works best for you, Paul, I suppose?
Yeah, he really he's good at. He's also good at sort of coming in and assessing, you know, where the group is at, and then going from there. And you know, I think he did that. He did that well. You know, when he came in 2019, we were in a different spot to where we were at the start of this year.
Yeah.
When he came in at the start of 2019, we'd lost the prelim and we had a pretty strong squad, and we knew that we were a team that could really push for a premiership. So he came in, he didn't change too much, he didn't have to, and you know, this time around was a little bit different. You know, we came off a very disappointing season last year where we, you know, were second last, and he came in and he really worked at instilling that belief again in us, and you know, I think he's done a terrific job, and I think it showed for the start of our season.
Your opinion, because this is your second time round. We know he's a Hall of Famer. Is he an immortal in your opinion?
Yeah, I got asked this question the other day.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, okay. I don't know if we should start including non-players into immortal discussions, because, you know, then it becomes a little bit more, I don't want to say watered down, but it kind of...
Oh, you're right, mate. You're 100% right.
Yeah, there's a distinction in terms of these are players who are out there and did these incredible things on the field and had these incredible playing careers, whereas, you know, you could make an argument for having a separate category for coaches where, you know, your Wayne Bennett's, your Craig Bellamy's, and, you know, possibly Cleary in the future.
Mate, I reckon the NRL are absolutely shitting on the immortal concept, the way they're treating it.
Yeah.
Okay. I've said this to people all the way along, right?
Yep.
The strength of the Immortals, right, which is the elite of the elite, okay? The strength of the Immortals is judged by the quality of people who can't be made an immortal, who won't be an immortal. The people who can't get there, who are good, what they're doing is they're turning the Immortals into a sort of a pretend Hall of Fame. There's too many guys being made immortals. You shouldn't be having 3, 4, 5 guys per generation being made immortals. That's what your Hall of Fame is for.
Okay.
Yeah, I spoke to the NRL about this ages ago. And so the NRL, as a game, we've got no patience, and we've got no sense of history, we've got no background in the game. Like most of the commission, to be fair to them, other than Wayne Pearce, most of them weren't around the game 15 years ago, okay, or 20 years ago, in any sort of capacity whatsoever. So they're in the history of the game, they're Johnny-come-latelys. Andrew Abdo, he's not a rugby league person, to be fair, okay? Like, he's a solid administrator, all that, but he's not a rugby league person. And again, even before that, Todd Greenberg, you'd argue, was not a rugby league person. And Todd was the first one that started to open up this Immortals concept. The Immortals should be kept sacred, and they're not. By bringing in more and more Immortals, which is a great... Look, you know, the cynic in me, and I'll say this, and it's 100% right, they'll deny it, but it's a revenue stream for them. It's a marketing concept. It's a way to get rugby league in the papers all the time. It's a great idea. The AFL would kill for the Immortals, okay? They tried to have something similar. They couldn't. What they did, though, and this shows the self-control of the AFL against the rugby league, the NRL, they went away and they, within their Hall of Fame, which was the pinnacle of their game, they wanted an Immortals concept. So they came up with this, what they call legend status.
Yep.
So once you're in the Hall of Fame, some players in the Hall of Fame go on to become a legend, which is their version of immortal. They can't take the immortal name because it's so rugby league. But they had the self-control to say, okay, this is our Hall of Fame. This is how many people we've got in the Hall of Fame. And they had a rule whereby you can only ever have 10% legends to Hall of Famers.
Yes.
So so if you've got 130 in the Hall of Fame, you're only allowed to have 13 legends.
Yeah.
Okay.
Legends, yeah.
And you can't have another legend until you've got 140 in the Hall of Fame. However many years that takes to get to 140. I spoke to Peter V'landys about this. He said, I love the idea. Okay. And I thought it would bring back some discipline about the Immortals concept. But right now we've got Immortals, and they're going to start pumping along in a minute. We're going to say, I heard some arguments, which I think is disgraceful.
Okay.
You know, that they forget waiting 5 years for Cameron Smith to qualify for the Hall of Fame. He's going to get there, so throw him straight in. There's nothing wrong with waiting. There's nothing wrong with waiting and serving your turn. See,
Fair
but
call.
we lose our discipline in that because we all want the feel good moment in rugby league. Nobody loves a sugar hit more than the NRL. Okay, the whole competition's being overrun with sugar hits. We've got Vegas, we've got the Easter weekend, we've got Magic Round, we've got all these sugar hits. Then we've got Origin in the middle. But by doing this with the Immortal concept, they're gonna ruin it. At one point, they will ruin it because they're gonna have too many guys in there. Firstly, what that does is it makes your Hall of Fame almost redundant, makes it a secondary sort of competition or secondary category behind the Immortals because there's so many Immortals. And the strength of the Immortals has got to be judged by the people who make, gee, he was a great player, that bloke, but not good enough to be an Immortal. Right now they're talking about Jonathan Thurston, Billy Slater, Cameron Smith. Like and you watch, the next time this comes up as a discussion, there won't be one Immortal come in. They'll lose their nerve. They'll try and make everybody happy. Every kid gets a prize. They'll put them all in, and they'll argue that they all should have been there. I've got no problems with some of those guys. Cameron Smith, I think, is a lay down misère for an Immortal. He's played more games than anyone and was the most influential player that played the game, certainly for the 18 years that he played. But I just don't see how they can go down that road again. Gives me the shits, actually. There you go. That's my rant for the day.
I love it. Paul, can they put someone in the Hall of Fame and then get them out of there and make them an Immortal later on?
Well, no, you've got to be to be an Immortal. You've got to be in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Nice. You have to be qualified. But but we're losing, John. We're just losing that self-discipline to say, you know what? Let's limit how many guys get to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
and part of it is, for example, and this has got to upset a few people. Ronnie Coote got made Immortal last year. Okay. The last time, which is, I can't remember, say 4 or 5 years ago when I think Mal got made Immortal was the last time before that.
That's right.
They actually had a category then that once you had a certain amount of times that you are nominated, which I think was 5, which Ronnie Coote had been, if you go up 5 times to nomination and don't get there, then you are no longer allowed to be considered.
Who changed the rules there?
Well, I don't know who changed the rules. I wasn't working in the game at the time.
Okay.
I was unemployed. Okay.
Joined the club.
I was sidelined. But that's what they did, okay? And they subtly, quietly changed the rules because Ronnie Coote, and look, we all love Ronnie Coote, you know what I mean? So I don't want to say this is a knock on him. And I believe he should have been in the Immortals sooner than what he was, okay? So I've got no problem with him finally getting there. But they broke their own rules to get him in. They broke their own rules. It's just, I just don't understand how they do that. And eventually they'll ruin the Immortals for that reason. What are your chances of becoming an Immortal, mate?
I'm off to a slow start.
Didn't we, Paul? Jesus.
But if you can get there, hey, listen.
And I'm going to tell Wayne
I'll throw your vote my way.
Campbell, when I see Wayne on Sunday, I'm going to tell him you didn't want him as an Immortal.
Let him know, mate. Let him know.
No, but
I agree,
shouldn't
Paul.
be brought in.
I think he'd agree too.
Look, Wayne.
We're saying it's a joke. I totally agree. Players.
See, Wayne, they broke the rules bringing Wayne in.
Into the Hall of Fame.
Wayne should have been retired. You're supposed to be retired 5 years before you could be considered. Wayne's not retired. Now, there's a chance Wayne won't ever retire, which is probably why they did it. But again, you go back to that. Why does Wayne get rushed in and a bloke like Warren Ryan, who fundamentally changed the game?
They changed it because of him.
Fundamentally changed. Do you know much about Warren Ryan?
I don't know anything about him now.
Before Warren Ryan played,
the Newtown Jets jersey.
Warren Ryan changed. He brought in the blueprint. He was the first one to start the split centres. Yeah, so these days the way you have learned to play the game is left centre, right centre, 5'8" and lock, you split sides and all the rest, or 5'8" and a half split sides, depending. It used to be 5'8" lock, now it's 5'8" and a half split sides and all that. Before then, it was the pack just sort of basically followed the ball around like a kid's soccer game.
Right.
And the backs just went to the open side waiting for some ball.
Right.
And we had inside centres and outside centres.
Yeah.
Okay, and half always played to the 5'8". Occasionally you have a lock would play short sides.
Right.
So it's completely different. Warren Ryan sat there. Warren Ryan was the first coach to come along and go, okay, to look at spaces. He took it out of soccer. Soccer, they'll kick the ball to spaces. Warren Ryan was the first, before they ever played rugby league man-to-man. Yeah, you lined up against Johnny, and you guys just sorted out whoever came out on top. Warren Ryan said, actually, between Johnny and his defender over there's a space. That's actually where I want you to play. So he changed the whole blueprint of the game.
What era was this?
He began the early 80s. He took this Newtown side with this jersey behind me, who were just battlers, got him to the grand final, got beat by Parramatta in 81, and then he took over Canterbury and got Canterbury won the comp 84, 85 in Canterbury, got beat by Parramatta in 86, and then he got Balmain to the grand final in 89 and 90. Changed the game completely, but he's cantankerous.
Non-conformist.
And he doesn't suffer fools.
Yep.
And included in that group is a large section of the NRL community. So he's not, I would say, particularly popular. But he should have been the first coach in. Should have been the first coach in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
It's fascinating that he's not there.
It is.
And they still won't bring him. So anyway.
Andrew Johns himself says he's the best coach he's ever had.
Andrew Johns still goes and catches up with him, Johnny. And
the
has
immortal
a coffee
Andrew
with him.
Jones.
Johnny it still goes once a week, once a fortnight, sits down, has a coffee with him, and they just sit there talking football.
Wow.
So even as old, he's in his 80s now, but he still hasn't lost that intellect around the game. So
does he still watch the game? Is he still?
Yeah, watches the game. Yeah, he's still around the game. You know, but he just unpopular is probably the way. I got on well with him, then I didn't get on well with him, then I got on well with him, then I didn't get on well with him, because he's one of those blokes that, if you don't see things his way, he can turn a little bit nasty on you. So.
Yeah, definitely.
But Wayne, just talk us through that, though, because I'm interested in what you said before about the difference. You had Badge when you came in, you had Seabold year 2, then you had Wayne year 3. 3 very different coaches. Then Demetrio after that.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about their different styles and how they sort of look at the game differently?
Yeah, to be fair, I probably didn't experience enough of Madge.
Yep.
It was his last year at South, and I did a couple of weeks in the pre-season with him, and then I got pulled into the first grade squad with 5 games to go of that year. So I suppose to say that he had a big influence on my game probably wouldn't be accurate. I didn't experience enough of his coaching, but I loved his passion and what he brought. I definitely felt that. But then with Siebes, obviously, he came in and he was a lot more technical and was big on stats, and we trained really fast, and we did a lot of our conditioning in the preseason with game-specific drills and all that kind of thing, which was all quite new, and it was good. I enjoyed my time.
New, was it?
Yeah. I enjoyed my time under Siebes, actually, and even though it was short-lived, it was 1 year, but...
Because that's one of the big things too, isn't it? The player, the coaching where you train greater than game speed.
Yeah.
Which then, hopefully, once you're out in the field, sort of makes the game seem a bit slower than what it actually is.
Yeah, so that he was big on that. So we'd always be training it. How do
you do that?
So there's drills that you can manipulate where you're defending with a couple players down, or you're playing 6 on 5 games with big spaces, like a big field, and so you're covering more meters per second and higher intensities. And there was a drill I remember where you'd have 2 teams, but there'd only be 3 tackles and kicks, so there's a lot more kind of arm wrestle type vibe to it. And and he had all the stats and all that to back it up, and big on the GPS and how that was tracking, and I enjoyed it. And I thought, again, we had another pretty successful year in 2018 under Siebes, but he was only there for the year, and then Wayne came in 19, and I remember I was shitting myself a bit with Wayne coming in because I didn't know what to expect, and I was pretty young at the time, obviously, and I came in. But then the thing that and it's been covered by nearly everyone who's played with him is the care factor that he has for the group, and how good he is at building a relationship with the individual, and that was the biggest thing with Wayne. And
Can I just ask you about that, because we do hear that a lot, okay? And we all sort of assume, for people who are outside the game, we all sort of assume that all coaches care, and all coaches are, they've got a vested interest in your happiness, that you like being a trainer. Wayne has an ability, certainly, that must go above and beyond that, because that's the thing that players speak to when they speak about Wayne.
Yeah.
What? Firstly, is it just an arm around the shoulder? Like, how does he exhibit that? But secondly, why are players responding so much to that?
I think the biggest thing with Wayne, and it's kind of a interesting way to look at it, is how direct he speaks to you about, where you're at with him and where he sees you. And
can you give us an example?
So an example is if you have a poor game, he will not beat around the bush, and he'll tell you, what you've done wrong and what he expects from you, and why it wasn't good enough, and or if you're lacking in standards, he'll call you on that, and He's big on building trust between you and him in terms of, if you messed up, you just own it and you tell him that you messed up, and he doesn't like being bullshitted too, and as a person, you respect that, getting it back to you. So
can I just interrupt
Did
here?
you have to say that, Graham?
Can I just interrupt here? Can you talk about people who are standards and being bullshitted to?
He loves a scully
John,
one, you know that, don't you?
John, can we just hear once more the 1984? I don't know if you've heard this, Campbell.
I've heard this. No.
1985, Wayne, the launch of Wayne's coaching career. Okay, Wayne was in the Brisbane Rugby League, and he took over a team, South Brisbane, who were. Mine's a bit of a battler club. They had good kids coming through and all the rest of it. But the superstar club at the time was Wynnum Manly, who had Wally Lewis and Chris Close, G. Miles,
Colin Scott, Greg
Dillon.
Dillon.
They had all the superstars and the guys who would become the core Origin players. Wayne had all these young kids and got them all the way to the grand final in 1985. Massive underdogs to win the game. And Mr. Elias over here, John, could you just take it away for the rest of the story, please?
Thank you, Paul. It was only months earlier, beginning of the year. I told him to go and get fucked because he put me in reserve grade.
Yeah.
And I had an argument with him. I'd done 55 tackles anyway. He says, we don't do stats in reserve grade. So we've gone to the grand final. I've made me Wayne to the grand final. Captain's run, mind you. I don't show up for training. I'm about 2 hours late. And he's instructed all the players, Mal Meninga, Peter Jackson, do not talk to Gaddafi. My nickname was Gaddafi.
Which is politically correct.
Because I had... for 2 hours, they wouldn't.
Well, you're Lebanese, you had the big hair.
Yes. I wore green to training. There you go.
Looked like Colonel Gaddafi.
Yes. The players wouldn't talk to me, Graham, for 2 hours. And I was fucking paranoid.
You keep calling Campbell too if you want, anytime you like.
I was paranoid and I was getting the shit, so I pulled one over. What's going on, Wayne? He said, well, tell us why you're late. He says, Wayne, didn't you hear the sirens? I'm telling the truth. I got an 88-year-old bloke living next door to me. I had to knock the door down, give him life to life, mouth to mouth, saved his life, waited for the ambulance to get there. Mate, I'm a hero. I am a hero. He says, Gaddafi, that'll do me. If this was any other game, I'd have you dropped. But because it was a grand final, he couldn't swap anybody. So he couldn't drop me. So there you go.
And so, John, the reason you missed training the Saturday morning's captain's run.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you have to say.
I went to watch a trotter at Albion Park Trots by the name of Pro Chevalier. The horse
one of the great trotters. He'd never seen him. He'd never seen him race before.
I wanted to see it live. It didn't even win. So I've got home about 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't drink, and I got to training late. This is a captain's run before the biggest game of the season, and we're massive underdogs. And I had to do something special for the game. I just couldn't let the teammates down. We come out. We beat Wynnum Manly 10-8.
Nice.
And we launched.
You were man of the match. He was man of the match.
And we launched Wayne. Did you know, Paul, that game? 2 Immortals come out of that game. Mal Meninga and Wally Lewis.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how the stand was very big.
Wow.
Yes.
Two legitimate Immortals too.
2 legitimate. There you go. Legitimate.
What a story.
So don't bullshit to Wayne Bennett is the moral of the
Wayne knew
story.
he was full of shit, but
Wayne
picked him anyway.
Yeah, nice.
But you say that when Wayne came back, this is interesting, that when Wayne came back this time, different message this time than the first time he walked into the club.
Yeah, as I touched on earlier, we were in a different position as a club and as a playing group when he came the first time. And I remember the first couple of weeks in the 2019 pre-season, he didn't really do much. He kind of actually sat back and watched for a couple of weeks.
That's what he does.
Yeah, and he got a feel for the place and and he was thinking about what he liked and what he thought we could improve on, and he didn't have to change too much. And to be fair, it probably helped. Our leadership group at the time was strong. We had Sam, Greg, Sut, Renault, very strong leadership crew, and and then this time around, we were in a different position. We had a poor season last year, and
so what's he done, mate? What's he done there? Like, what is he tightened things up? Is he given a few bucks kick in the ass? What's he done to try and say, okay, guys, look, what I'm seeing here is not good enough if we're going to be fair dinkum?
Yeah, he probably just put a lot of onus on us as a playing group in terms of, a bit of honesty around, what our standards should be and what we should accept out of each other and what we should accept out of ourselves, probably most importantly. And, he's big on owning and having accountability for your performances. And, that's one thing that I think has definitely helped us.
How did you guys respond to that, though? Like, was there some guys there that probably hadn't been coached by him before who were a bit pissed about it?
I think a lot of the young lads were kind of, they were, as most young players are with Wayne, a little bit sort of starstruck at the start and, probably weren't used to his direct way of coaching. And but I think you can see the benefits it's made, So I think Peter Mamazoulis is a good example, Jai Gray, like young lads who have sort of got an opportunity to play and they're performing really well for us. And I think Wayne had some pretty choice words for Pete at the start of pre-season, and he came out and had a great pre-season. He was probably one of our best all pre-season, and I think that's transferring onto the field for him.
And Wayne to do something like that with Pete too, because he'd go in his back of his head, he'd be like, I really need this bloke. I really need him to come out and do something for me.
Yeah.
So he'd give him a kick in the arse early.
Yeah. Get
him working hard nice and early, and then he can give him the cuddles at the end of it.
Yeah.
And say, mate, you're doing what I need you to do.
Yeah, exactly. So he's he's got us all in a good place, and I'm excited as to where we can go over the next couple of years.
When you talk about the group, so Wayne's going to be there. What, this year and next year? I think he signed for 3 years, is it?
2 more years.
So they're 2 years after this. Recruitment's going to be part of the job. Yeah, you could probably argue that you had lost a couple of players over years, and you sort of got to get back in the fight there. Guys like you, who you're a rep standard player. You got Cody Latrell. You got like that senior playing group. Do you ever get consulted on? Look, when we look at this guy, what do you think of him? Like, how does he go? Or does that ever come through the group anymore? Like, you used to in the old days, but
personally, never.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's because of the position I play on the field. I'm not kind of in the spine, or in saying that, I don't think I'd want to either. Especially at this point in my career, I don't really want to be involved in that sort of side of things. I want to leave that up to the coaches. And I guess if the spine players have a preference in terms of the kind of player they want to bring in. For me personally, as teammates, I want to play with blokes who work hard and I suppose put the team first. I know it sounds cliche, but they're the blokes that you love playing with. So in terms of that, I don't have any involvement in that, never have, and I wouldn't mind if I never do.
What about then, just to sort of slightly sidetrack, what's happened at West Tigers this week?
First,
the shit fight that's really happened there. Like, I know everybody goes, "Oh, look, it's their club, not ours," but rugby league, we all know what rugby league is, and in every training paddock across the NRL this week, the players would have been speaking about it. Yeah,
it's a bit of a head scratcher, to be honest. From the outside looking in, they're playing good footy, and that seems to be working for them on the field. But I think the thing that my opinion of the whole situation is, I just can't believe how public it all has been, and it's kind of how much detail around what has been going on behind the scenes has come to light. In terms of like unrest amongst the playing group and all that kind of thing, and whether all of it's accurate or not.
But some of them have even posted, like a couple of 3 players, or 2 players have actually posted their own criticisms of Lachie Galvin, including Jerome Luai, who's the senior player at the club there. And then another player has liked a comment that a fan made or whatever. I find that fascinating that the players have been so strong in their feelings about one of their teammates.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd want to protect your teammates no matter sort of what position they're in, because from my understanding, he's there next year as well.
It's technically he is, but for life, I don't see how he can survive it.
Yeah, so it is a weird one, and I don't know, unless they're trying to, as a playing group, they're trying to set a standard amongst themselves, or I'm not sure, but it's
Luai wrote team first. That's what he put down. So that's his offering to how he feels about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
which you can understand. That's what they've got to. That's how
to go forward.
Teams get better, don't they?
Yeah. So that's I suppose probably the way I'd look at it is that there's just players that they probably want to set a standard, and I suppose Lachie Galvin's one of their star players, so they're setting a precedent that no one's really safe if you want to, no one's really above the team is probably what they're getting at. So yeah.
Do you know, for me, Paul, timing stinks. I think. Why don't they wait with the manager or the club? Wait till the end of the year. Just go back to the club and say, listen, we're the player manager. Yes, we like the offer. Can we wait till the end of the year? Let him make a decision then.
Yeah.
Let him get through the season.
Let him get through the season. Look what's happened now. It's a loss for both parties.
Yeah.
The player's gone to New South Wales Cup.
You know what? It's ass covering an ego, John. That's why it's now. I reckon Tigers put out a statement to basically cover their own ass because
knowing they're going to lose him.
Well, if they've been told now he's definitely not staying. You look at it this way: if they've been told now that he's definitely not staying, so all intents really they're just being asked to wait till the end of the year. At which point the pressure will build up on the club to re-sign him. There'll be an expectation from the club that he's going to be re-signed. Yeah. And as November 1 approached, there'll be a lot more questions being asked, a lot more people going, how come it's not done yet? Why is it not done? And at that point, then the club would have had to come out and go, well, listen, he's not signing with us, he's going elsewhere. So I think they've tried to get ahead of all that and put it out now and really lump it on him, really lump it on Galvin. We've done our best. He's not even willing to entertain an offer from us. So I think they've covered their own backsides, the Tigers, by doing it that way. I think they're throwing that kid right into it, right? But I also think his manager really needs to your point, he could have just held the Tigers off and said, look, let's just get through the season because this has got – I don't think he can play – first grade for West Tigers again.
He's not going.
I think it's done. They've put him back to reserve grade this week, right? He's playing for Magpies on Monday against Parramatta.
And it has nothing to do with form, Paul.
Nothing to do with form. At what point do they bring him back? I think the part that where it's been leaked that he was didn't see his future developing well enough under Benji. That's been really embarrassing to Benji. And I think Benji, I sort of wonder, whether Benji had it in his mind that he was going to drop him, and that this whole senior leadership group came to me and asked that he not be in the side as a bit of a smoky to cover that, or whether it's both of them together. But I tell you what, as a way to stuff up your season, Tigers they've just hit the new benchmark.
Oh, but the poor fans as well.
Well, they're shattered. They're shattered. They're shattered. They have finally got. They're 3-3.
Yeah.
How long since the Tigers have been 3-3?
It's been a while.
They're running 7th. They're running 7th. They're finally showing some like green shoots of improvement. And just as it was going okay, but the club could have, I believe, copped the brunt themselves, had the kick of the guts to the ego and all the rest of it, and they didn't have to put the statement out.
No.
Okay? They didn't have to put the statement out. The manager, I'm led to believe, was not going to leak it until, it was not going to leak it because it didn't have to be leaked, okay? But that would have embarrassed the club. And so I think that's what they've done. And so I think if you had to put it down to one, most of the blame sits on the club.
Because if they shut their mouths, let him play the season, make the semi-finals, then go look for a number 7.
Well, not only that, John.
Doesn't derail the team.
What you do is you go out and you find one now in the meantime. You go and sign Daly Cherry Evans for 2 years.
Yeah, I agree.
Knowing he's already got to go, you can go back and you can re-engineer what actually happened once it happens, right? You can tell people, well, we had to sign, say, Cherry Evans, for example, or Fogarty, who's also out there apparently. Yeah. So we had to sign one of those because we were told back in April that he was definitely not going to re-sign. That's all they had to do. Yeah. But they I think to save their own ego, save criticism to themselves, they club put that statement out.
What did the late Jake Gibson used to say, Paul? Grand finals are won in the boardroom.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But they've stuffed it up.
They've stuffed it up. You're right, Paul.
But I imagine rugby league players everywhere would be just fascinated by this.
They'd love this.
Across the game.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's a head scratcher. Like you look from the outside and you don't see too often that that this sort of stuff comes to light publicly, and
it's far out,
yeah. I feel for Lachie Galvin, to be honest. He's a young lad. I don't know him personally, and I don't know the details. I don't know that. I suppose
it's damaging for his career too, isn't it?
Yeah, like I'm sure it's a lot. On the kid's plate. And
in what way, Paul?
Well, he won't play the rest of this season in NRL. Okay, and if depending on what happens, but technically he's still contracted for Tigers next season.
Right.
So if Tigers wanted to be really nasty about this, they could sit him in for the next 18 months, John, sit in reserve grade.
Yeah, I agree. But obviously he's got a contract somewhere else, and it's not gonna be made public.
But he can't. Yeah, but he can't go anywhere else because he's contracted to the Tigers.
Yeah.
If they want to sit there and hold firm, which I don't think they will, because it's just not in any club's interest to do that these days, which is what managers know.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's your manager?
Steve Deacon.
He's a nice fella. First we had Dylan Brown. Cherry Daly Evans come along to save him.
Cherry Evans.
Daly Cherry Evans come to save him. Now we got Mr. Galvin taking the pressure off Cherry. So who's going to be next? I love the entertainment, Paul. It's great. Talking about entertainment. Your nickname, we know why. It's Stretch. Who gave you that nickname?
So I want to give him his flowers. Scott Wilson, my under-16s coach, gave me the nickname Stretch, and he's been hounding me for years to let that be known publicly. So there you go.
There you go, Scotty.
Well, I will say, Scotty's a mate of both of ours.
Yes.
Yeah. He's been begging us. To
make sure you ask him.
He'll deny it, but he's been begging us to come out. He keeps asking to come on too, Scott. You're not coming on.
That episode would go forever if he got on here.
He does have a million stories to tell. He is one of the best. Look, mate, I just want to say thanks for coming in, all right? I really appreciate you coming in. You are more than welcome anytime. I know that you have plans someday to look into some media work.
Yeah.
And I'll do whatever I can to help you.
I appreciate that, mate. Cheers for having me.
It'd be ideal.